Okay, so we're back, and we are diving right into episode 6 of Insta Millionaire. This week's episode is called The Competition of Gifts.
Okay.
And it picks up right where episode 5 left off, after that whole lunch thing, which was a little awkward.
Yeah.
Even with all the money in the world, like Joe has.
Right.
Turns out appearances still matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this time, instead of fancy restaurants, we're going into the world of online streaming. So with Minnie and her live chat.
Okay, yeah.
And it gets really interesting here. We're talking digital clout, virtual gifts, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you ever thought about, how much your online presence is actually worth?
It's a whole new economy built on attention.
Totally, right?
Yeah.
And I never really thought about it until I saw this episode and Minnie's live stream, right? She's just there hanging out, chatting, and then, bam,
Yeah.
Ghostwriter enters the scene.
It's like he explodes onto the screen.
Oh, totally. And he's just showering her with these digital gifts.
Yeah, 5 clicks, $300, gone just like that.
I know.
It's fascinating.
It's wild.
How this episode portrays online personas, He's shrouded in anonymity, flashing that cash, and it becomes instantly captivating.
Yeah, and he's not even just being generous about it either.
Yeah.
He's throwing out insults. Anybody who even questions, why is he doing this?
Right.
And poor Ben, who's just, Joe's roommate, becomes a target, right?
Yeah.
Gets hit with labels like scruffy and poor.
And then, of course, he gets booted from the chat entirely.
Yeah, he gets kicked right out.
Which I think brings up a really interesting point.
Okay.
About how these social hierarchies
Yes.
that we see in the real world, they just get mirrored and magnified online, It's like instead of erasing those dynamics, it just gives them a new battleground.
A new anonymous battleground. And it's interesting because Minnie, right, she's stuck in the middle of all this.
Totally.
And she's obviously loving the attention. And, let's be real, the money.
Yeah, those gifts represent real money.
Right, exactly. But you can't help but wonder, is there some part of her that's a little uncomfortable with all of this?
Absolutely. I think Minnie's situation really speaks to how complex these parasocial relationships can be.
Oh, yeah.
Between influencers and their audience.
Totally.
Viewers feel like they have a real connection.
Right.
But there's also a huge vulnerability there.
Yeah.
Especially when you throw money into the mix. It makes you question the influence of these large gifts in online communities.
Yeah. Are they actually being generous?
Yeah.
Or is it just another way to exert control,
Exactly.
And then, as if on cue,
right.
we get another player entering the game.
Oh, yeah.
Esteemed Admirer.
Here we go.
And if Ghostwriter was making a splash, this new benefactor is like a tidal wave. We're talking superclass worship gifts now.
Okay.
Each one worth $100, flooding her stream, and the whole chat is going crazy. Talk about an escalation. It's like this whole thing goes from 0 to 60. Ghostwriter's there. He's the one with all that kind of the attitude and everything. And suddenly he's dethroned.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
By this anonymous person with even more money.
Right. And I think that's such a good illustration of online spaces.
Yeah.
1 minute you're on top and the next minute there's someone else, especially when there's this much money involved.
Yeah. And it really makes you think, who's really in control, right?
Yeah, exactly. In a world where you can buy influence with virtual gifts.
Right, exactly.
So really has the power.
Totally. And then to see what happens next.
Yeah.
Ghostwriter's calling all the shots, right?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, he's out banned by Esteemed Admirer, who immediately takes over as manager of Minnie's channel.
He just swoops in and takes control.
It's like a digital coup.
It really is. It's so fascinating how this episode takes these real world power dynamics
Yeah.
and just puts them online, It's like you were saying, who has the power? Well, wealth can silence people.
Yeah.
Offline and online, it seems.
Yeah, totally.
And it's interesting because then you've got Ben.
Right, poor Ben.
Who was ridiculed by Ghostwriter.
Kicked out.
Publicly humiliated. And then Esteemed Admirer brings him back.
I know. It's like he's the hero now.
Right, the knight in shining armor. And he even leaves this message. Yeah. If you are rich, you shouldn't look down on others.
How ironic is that, though?
Right. The ultimate irony.
That's so ironic. It's this guy who just used his wealth to take over the entire stream.
Right, took control by force, basically.
Is now preaching about humility.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you make of that?
Well, the episode doesn't give us any easy answers, right? Which I appreciate. But it makes you think about like all of the complexities
Oh, totally.
of people's actions online and what their motivations really are.
Absolutely, because we see this all the time.
Right. And it's like the episode is holding up a mirror to our own experiences and saying, hey, have you ever seen this happen?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've seen generosity being used as a tool?
Yeah, or even like thought about how online personas can be so different
Totally. Yeah.
from who people are in real life.
Absolutely.
It's like it's all connected. So much to think about, right? Like this episode throws so many questions at us.
It really does. And that's what makes Insta Millionaire so interesting, right? Like they don't feel the need to spoon feed the audience.
Totally. And they trust that we're smart enough to like figure things out on our own.
Exactly. It's refreshing, you know? Instead of just being told what to think, it's like the episode is holding up this mirror.
It's true.
And it's asking like, okay, what are you going to do with this? What are you seeing here? Like, have you ever come across these kinds of dynamics in your own online life?
Right. And I think that's what I love about these deep dives, right?
Yeah.
We're taking this episode and we're using it to talk about our own relationships with all of these things, with wealth, with status, with online behavior.
And it's fascinating how even though this is all happening in the digital world with these virtual gifts and everything, it's still so relevant to what's going on in the broader world, you know?
Absolutely. It makes you think about all those times you've seen generosity being used too, like almost as a weapon.
Right. Or to manipulate people.
Exactly.
Or when someone's online persona is totally different from who they really are.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that's a really key point because Insta Millionaire does such a good job of highlighting that.
It does.
The power of perception, right? Like whether you're online or offline.
Yeah.
Who are we drawn to and why? And how much of that is influenced by things like how much money someone has?
It's really making me rethink like, you know, those flashy usernames and like all the showing off.
Yeah, and it makes you question like what are they trying to compensate for?
Exactly. What are those motivations? And I think on that note, we've definitely done our due diligence with episode 6, right?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We've gone from awkward lunches to this whole live streaming showdown.
All in one episode. It's been quite the ride.
But hey, that's Insta Millionaire for you, right?
Exactly. Always keeping us on our toes.
And for everyone listening, remember that like just because we've, finished dissecting this episode, it doesn't mean the conversation has to end.
Yeah, keep those questions in mind.
Right. Keep thinking about these things because they're everywhere. But for now, we'll catch you next time.